The planet didn't kill them on the way down. That was the first surprise. Commander Yale Drawson had cataloged 18 possible failure modes during the descent. Hull breach, attitude thruster failure, chute tangle, terrain impact angle, electrical storm interference, micrometeorite strike. And the capsule had, with what felt almost like spite, chosen a combination of all of them simultaneously while still managing to leave her alive. She came to hanging sideways from her harness, the world tilted 90 degrees, the inside of the capsule smelling like burnt wiring and copper and something else she couldn't name yet. Something old. Something that had no business being on a planet that wasn't supposed to have anything alive on it. She cut herself down. Her right shoulder hit the capsule wall, and she bit through the inside of her cheek. Sable. Her voice came out thicker than she expected. Sable, status. The ship AI's voice was steady, which was the only thing that was. Structural integrity is compromised. Life support is nominal. Beacon is transmitting. Estimated rescue window, 14 to 19 hours. A pause that lasted a half second too long. Commander, I'm reading anomalous biological signatures in a 40-meter radius. Define anomalous. I don't have a reference category for what I'm reading. That was the second surprise. Sable always had a reference category. Yale found Petrov wedged against the instrument panel on what was now the floor, still strapped in. His helmet cracked along the left temple, but intact. His breathing slow and regular, a cut on his chin, painting a red stripe down his jaw. She checked his pupils, checked his pulse, found both. She sat back on her heels and looked at the crack in his helmet, and then at the planet outside the porthole. What she could see of it was a smear of rust-orange rock and low, wind-bent vegetation, gray-green, like something half-alive, neither dead nor thriving, suspended between the two. The sky was the color of old bone. She had the same thought she always had when she saw a new world for the first time. She'd joined the REACH program for this, the precise, unrepeatable second when a human eye fell on a piece of the universe that had never been looked at before. It lasted about 2 heartbeats. Then the training took over, and she started cataloging what could kill her. Petrov came around while she was pulling the emergency kit from the side panel. He blinked, touched the crack in his helmet, looked at her. "We down?" he said. "Very. How bad? Bad enough." She handed him a water pouch. "Beacon's active. 14 hours minimum." He accepted the water, drank, and made the face he always made when he was about to say something she wouldn't want to hear. Mikhail Petrov was the only person she'd ever met who apologized preemptively through facial expression. "Yael, I think I hit the rock shelf on the way out. You were inside the capsule, before the capsule. When we were trying to realign the EVA anchor, I went outside, remember? I think I hit my arm on the shelf." She looked at his arm. The suit was intact. He hadn't mentioned it for the entire 18-minute descent, which was either stoicism or shock, and she wasn't sure which. "We're sealed," she said. "Suit integrity. Sable already told me. There's a microfracture in the elbow seal, 0.3 millimeters, below the threshold for depressurization alarm." She looked at him for a long moment. Outside, the wind moved. The gray-green vegetation pressed against it, bent but rooted, and she thought of a word her grandmother used. "Stubborn," she said, "is not a flaw. It's a decision." "All right," Yale said. She turned back to the emergency kit. "We stay sealed until rescue. 14 hours. We've done longer." "Sable's biological reading," Petrov said. He wasn't asking. "We stay inside," she said again. They stayed inside for 6 hours. It was Petrov who heard it first. Not a sound exactly. More like the absence of one, the specific quality of silence that meant something nearby had stopped moving because it had heard you. He put his hand on her arm, and she went still, and they both sat in the dimness of the emergency lighting, listening to the planet breathe. Something touched the outer hull. One contact, then two, then a scattered pattern like a handful of gravel thrown, except it wasn't gravel. It moved. It redistributed. The sound tracked along the exterior of the capsule from stern to bow, slow and systematic, the way a hand runs along a wall searching for a door. Sable's voice was very quiet. "Commander, the biological signatures are concentrating on the hull surface. What are they? They appear to be a colony organism. Individual units are microscopic, subcellular structure, but they demonstrate collective behavior with a sophistication I can't quantify. They're searching. That's the only word I have for it." Yale looked at Petrov. Petrov looked at his elbow. "The microfracture, 0.3 millimeters. Sable," he said. "How small is subcellular?" The silence lasted 2 seconds. "Smaller than 0.3 millimeters. He looked up at her. His eyes were calm, and that was the worst part of it. Petrov was always calmest when things were at their worst because panic, he had told her once over bad coffee in a training module on Luna, is what happens when you run out of options. He never ran out of options. He just ran down them methodically until he arrived at the one he didn't want. Something got in, he said, during the EVA, before the fracture sealed over from the cold. I felt it, I think. I thought it was the temperature drop, but it wasn't. I felt something, Yale. She moved to him, checked his suit readouts. His core temperature was up by 0.8 degrees. Barely measurable. The kind of reading she would have attributed to impact, stress, adrenaline, the minor fever of a difficult day. The kind of reading you dismiss. We don't know that, she said. We do know that, he said it simply, without self-pity, the way you state a measurement. 2 + 2. What we don't know is how fast. She sat across from him in the cramped dim of the capsule, and the planet groaned against the hull, and she thought about what she knew. She knew that the REACH program had been running for 11 years, and had surveyed 42 worlds, and had found nothing but rock and gas and the occasional extremophile bacterium. And she had been good with that, had thought she was good with that. And now here was a world with something in it that didn't follow any of the categories. That searched, that recruited. It's looking for more hosts, Petrov said. He was watching her face, reading her the way he always did. That's what Sable means when she says sophisticated collective behavior. It's not just surviving. It's expanding. We don't transmit with the rescue team until we know what we're dealing with. Agreed. He paused. And if it gets to the point where I'm a transmission vector, Yael, you'll know when. You'll make the right call. Don't talk like that. I'm not talking like anything. I'm telling you I trust you. He reached into the side pocket of his suit and pulled out a battered tin flask. Contraband, technically, a small violation they'd maintained across 3 missions together. The kind of ritual that accumulates into something you don't acknowledge as important until it is. He held it out to her. 1 each. For the descent, that's the rule. She took it. Drank. It was terrible whiskey, harsh and sweet, and it tasted like every difficult thing she'd survived. She handed it back. 1 each, she said. He drank. Put it away. They sat in the quiet. It was 2 hours later that she first saw the change. She'd been watching him, peripherally, not staring, trying not to be the person whose eyes made things true by looking at them. But the change was not subtle. The cut on his chin had not clotted the way cuts clot. It had closed differently, too smoothly, too cleanly, the edges drawn together without the roughness of natural healing. And his left hand, resting on his knee, had gone very still in a way that wasn't rest. The fingers were slightly spread, like something was counting them. Like something inside him was learning how hands worked. Petrov, I know, he said. His voice was the same. That was the thing that hit her sideways. She had expected his voice to be the first thing to change. Instead, he sounded like himself, maybe even more so. The way people sometimes sound the most like themselves in the moments before. It's not painful. It's more like, I keep finding new muscles. Things that weren't there before. My vision is different. Not worse, just wider. I can see things at the edges that I couldn't before. What kind of things? He looked at the porthole. Outside, the vegetation was bending in the wind. She saw them as gray-green smears. She couldn't tell if he was seeing something else. There are thousands of them out there, he said. On the hull, on the ground, in the air. They're not thinking the way we think. It's more like a tide, a direction, a want. He turned back to her. They want in. They want what's in the capsule. They want what's in you, he said. They don't have a word for it. I don't think they have words for anything, but I can feel the reaching, I suppose. The capsule wall is what's between them and something they've never encountered before. A new kind of organism, new chemistry, new architecture. He smiled. It was still his smile. You're very interesting to them. I'm flattered. Yael. He stopped smiling. You need to hear this clearly. I will be completely translated in 6 to 8 hours. I can feel it. The parts of me that know that are shrinking. When I'm gone, the thing I'm becoming will open this capsule. She looked at him for a long time. That's not going to happen, she said. I know. That's why I need you to do it before then. Petrov, I need you to hear me be clear about this. He leaned forward, and his eyes were still his eyes, still the flat, practical eyes of the man who had saved her life twice and who drank terrible whiskey with her across 3-star systems, and who had a photograph of his daughter folded 4 times in his left breast pocket. I'm a geologist. I understand geological time. What's out there has been here for a very long time. Long enough to fill this planet down to the bedrock. If it gets off this rock, if it gets the capsule, if it gets back to the rescue ship, there is no wall high enough. There is no quarantine protocol fast enough. You know this. She knew this. There's another option, she said. He waited. The capsule's emergency fuel cell, the reserve, the one they put in for if the main drive fails at landing, so we have enough energy to lift the wreck into orbit for pickup. 400 kilograms of compressed hydrogen fluorine propellant. She watched him process it. If I breach the fuel cell from the outside, rig the ignition to the external diagnostic port, the detonation radius at surface pressure would be approximately 60 meters. The colony is in a 40-meter radius, he said. Was. Sable, current distribution of biological signatures. They're spread across approximately 90 meters and appear to be consolidating toward the capsule. Petrov looked at her. She held his gaze. You'd be in the radius, he said. Not if I time it right. From the outside, she said. There's a rock shelf about 80 meters northwest. I saw it from the porthole. Solid basalt, deep enough for cover. I'd need a running start in about 4 minutes on the fuel cell exterior coupling. She paused. 3.5 if I move fast. You're describing an 80-meter sprint in a full EVA suit across alien terrain, without knowing the atmospheric composition, buying yourself 4 minutes on a procedure you've never actually performed in field conditions, followed by a detonation that will destroy the beacon and leave you sitting on an alien rock waiting for a rescue team that won't know where you are. Yes, she said. He looked at her for a very long time. She didn't look away. I hate this plan, he said. You'd hate the alternative more. He reached into his pocket, took out the photograph, held it for a moment, his daughter, 7 years old, missing a front tooth, standing in front of a lake somewhere in what used to be Kazakhstan, squinting into the sun. He held it out to her. His hand was steady. She had never in her life respected anyone the way she respected him in that moment. Rescue team finds you, he said. You give her that. You tell her. Don't tell her the details. Tell her I was working. She took the photograph. Looked at it. Looked at him. I'll tell her you were working, she said. She had 90 seconds to get out of the capsule before the thing that had been Petrov could stop her. She had calculated this based on his reported timelines, on the rate of the temperature increase, on the smoothness of that wound closing. The alien biology was fast but not yet in control of voluntary motor function. 90 seconds of him being more himself than the other thing. She used 40 of them saying goodbye, which was more than she'd expected to have. She blew the emergency EVA hatch on the capsule's leeward side. The planet came in all at once. The smell of iron and ozone, the temperature a surprising cold that hit the suit sensors before it hit her skin, the sound of the wind which was low and constant and almost like breathing. Sable confirmed atmosphere, nitrogen-argon mix, trace organics, not breathable but not immediately corrosive. Good enough. She hit the ground running. The surface was not what she'd seen from the porthole. Up close it was fractured basalt sheeting, black underlayer showing through orange oxidation, and the gray-green vegetation wasn't plants in any sense she'd grown up with. They were dense fibrous mats of something, low and flat and anchored to the rock by root systems you couldn't see, and they moved in the wind the way water moves, all together, with a collective give and take. She ran through one and felt it cling briefly to her boot and release, and she thought, even the plants here don't let go easily. 40 meters. The colony swarmed at the edge of her visor. In the low amber light of the local star, they were almost invisible, a shimmer, a texture change on surfaces, like heat haze over pavement. They moved toward her with purpose but not speed. At this scale, at this density, speed wasn't their strategy. Patient encirclement was. She had 3 advantages. She was fast. She was stubborn. And she'd grown up on a low-gravity asteroid station where running in a suit was not a theoretical skill but a daily necessity. And she had. Her supervisor at the academy had written this in an evaluation, and she had kept the paper because it was the best thing anyone had ever said about her. A particular talent for moving efficiently in enclosed and restrictive environments, as though the limitations of the suit were not limitations at all, but parameters within which she could find a kind of freedom. She found the fuel cell coupling on the capsule's underside in under 30 seconds. It looked the same as every training diagram. It was not the same as every training diagram. The impact had warped the panel housing, cracked one of the coupling bolts, and the manual override ring was jammed half in, half out of its housing. She worked at it. The colony shimmered closer. She worked at it. Her fingers in the gloves were finding angles that required a precision the suit wasn't built for. and she was remembering something Petrov had said to her once. Standing in a lava tube on a dead moon, holding a geological sample that wouldn't come loose from the rock. Everything that doesn't want to come free will, she had said. Eventually, you just have to commit to the pull. She committed to the pull the coupling ring gave. She threaded the ignition bypass through the diagnostic port, a procedure she had, technically, read about once in a systems manual during a delay on a station somewhere. The kind of reading you do when you're bored, and the manual is there, and you never think you'll need it. She thought about the manual now. She thought about it very carefully. Her timer said 2 minutes and 14 seconds had passed. Behind her, inside the capsule, something moved. Not Petrov's movement, she knew his movement. The particular way he shifted his weight, the sound of his breathing. This was different. Something was learning how to use his body. She didn't look. She focused on the coupling, on the bypass, on the 3 connections that needed to be live in sequence. Before the 4th triggered the chain, she had the first 2. The 3rd was the warped one, the one the impact had seated wrong, and she could feel the colony on her suit now. Not pressure, but awareness. The suit's biosensors showing contact traces at the shoulder, at the knee. And she thought, not yet. You don't have enough of me yet. Not enough chemistry for a foothold. I am too warm and too fast and too angry for you to get a grip. The hatch of the capsule opened. She made the 3rd connection. She ran. She did not look back. 80 meters of fractured basalt and clinging gray vegetation between her and the rock shelf. And she put her head down and she ran the way she had run in the corridors of Meridian Station as a kid. All out, elbows up, the particular economy of motion that is not about grace but about commitment. There is a version of running that is trying to run fast, and there is a version that is deciding to arrive, and she was the second kind. Her boots found purchase on surfaces that looked like they wouldn't hold. Her suit's proximity alarms fired at intervals she ignored. She hurdled a shelf of broken rock without slowing, and the colony moved in the amber light around her, a shimmer, a tide, a wanting. She hit the rock shelf at 63 seconds. She threw herself behind the basalt, flat on her stomach, suit pressed against the rock, and she triggered the diagnostic override. The blast was not what she expected. She had expected noise. What she got first was light. A white core that expanded faster than her suit sensors could track. A pressure wave that hit the basalt, with a sound like the end of a sentence, and then heat, even here, even 80 meters away with solid rock between her and it, the suit temperature reading spiking and then normalizing. Debris fell like slow rain. A piece of capsule hull landed 2 meters to her left, smoking. She lay in the ringing quiet and stared up at the bone-colored sky. Her suit comms were dead, the beacon with them, exactly as predicted. She was on a planet that wasn't supposed to have anything alive on it, with no comms, no capsule, no partner, and somewhere between 14 and 19 hours before a rescue team arrived at a location where there was now a crater instead of a landing site. The colony, or most of it, was gone. The shimmer in the air near the crater was thermal distortion and nothing else. She sat up. She checked her suit. Oxygen nominal, temperature nominal, no biocontact alerts. She looked at the photograph, still in her suit pocket where she'd tucked it in the airlock. She looked at it for a while. Then she picked a direction and started walking toward where the rescue ship would most likely do a visual sweep pattern based on the beacon's last known coordinates. She walked the way she did everything, efficiently, without hurry, without panic, with the particular stubbornness that is not a diffusal of fear, but its better application. She was cold, and she was alone, and the planet was not interested in being a new home for humanity, and she had just destroyed the only shelter she had. She walked. She found the ridge in 4 hours. It gave her elevation and a clear line of sight in 3 directions, and a shallow cave at its base that cut the wind. She gathered the fibrous matte vegetation. It was not flammable in any useful sense, but it was insulating. And she built a reflective shelter from the emergency foil in her suit kit, and she sat in it, and she watched the sky. Sable's last telemetry before the comms went down had given her an orbital window. The rescue ship, the Meridian's Reach, would be in visual range in 9 hours, give or take, which meant she needed to produce a signal visible from low orbit at the right moment. She had her suit's emergency beacon, which was transmitting at minimum range with the comms array down. Not enough. She also had the suit's auxiliary chemical light pack, 4 sticks rated at 6 hours each. Not enough on their own, not against the ambient light of a local star, not from low orbit. But she had looked at the terrain on the way to the ridge. She had seen the fibrous matte vegetation. And she had been paying attention, the way she always paid attention, to the thing that didn't quite fit. The mats grew in patterns, not random, directional, linear, like they were following something subsurface, probably water, probably a mineral deposit. She had filed it as a geological interest note in the back of her mind and moved on. But now she pulled it forward, and she looked at the pattern, and she looked at the dried mat stalks she'd collected, and she thought, where there's mineral concentration, there's differential reflectivity. She spent 2 hours rearranging the dry mat stalks in a 100-meter line on the ridge, high contrast geometry on a low contrast terrain, a scratch on the face of the planet that would read differently from orbit. While she worked, she hummed. She didn't know she was doing it at first. It was something her mother had sung, a very old song from a place that barely existed anymore, in a language with too few speakers left, about a traveler who was lost but not frightened because they knew the stars, and the stars knew them. She hummed it until she noticed she was humming it, and then she hummed it deliberately, and it was company enough. She was on the 9th hour when she saw the ship. It came in low, the way they always do on visual sweep, below cloud cover if there was cloud cover, slow enough for optical sensors to resolve surface detail, the hull catching the amber starlight and throwing it back warm. She triggered all 4 chemical light sticks simultaneously. The line of mat stalks caught the light and threw it differently than the surrounding rock. She stood in the middle of it with her arms raised, and she thought, "See me. You've been trained for pattern recognition. You know what a geometric line on random terrain means. See me." The ship circled, it circled again, it came down. The debrief took 11 days. There were people with a great many questions, and she answered all of them, completely, without omission, including the parts she suspected they already knew from the suit's biosensor logs. She told them about the microfracture, and the temperature rise, and the too smooth healing. She told them about the photographs and the flask, and what he had said to her at the end. She told them about the detonation. She told them about the walk to the ridge, and the mat stalk signal. She told them everything. And when they were done asking, she sat in a small white room in a station above a world she would never see again, and she was very quiet for a while. The program coordinator came to see her. His name was Osei, and he had been running the Reach program since before she joined it, and he had the particular tiredness of someone who had been carrying something heavy for a long time. "You understand what you found," he said. "I understand what I found. We'll be recalling all active missions, full quarantine review. It's going to take time. I know." He was quiet for a moment. "Petrov's file says he had a daughter, 7 years old." She reached into her pocket and placed the photograph on the table between them. Osi looked at it for a long time. "He asked me to tell her he was working. I think he'd want her to know it was important work, that it counted for something." Osi picked up the photograph, held it. "It counted," he said. "More than he knew. The biodata from your suit sensors, the sequence of the colony's behavior, the rate of propagation, the targeting logic, that's more than we've ever had. That's a complete behavioral model. We know what we're dealing with now. We know what it wants and how it moves." He paused. "That's a wall we didn't have yesterday." She thought about walls. She thought about what Petrov had said. There is no wall high enough. And she understood that he had been right, and also that he had been wrong, the way precise things can be both at once. There is no wall high enough if you build it in the wrong place. But if you understand the shape of the thing you're walling against, its wants, its strategy, its speed, then you build differently. You build at the point of approach. You build where the reach has to narrow. "The planet," she said. "The colony, how much of it survived, based on the detonation yield and distribution." Osi pulled up a display. Between 40 and 60% sterilized. The rest is still present, still distributed across the planet's subsurface, possibly throughout the planet's subsurface. We don't know how deep the colony extends. It's been there a long time. "Long enough to have tested other arrival events," she said. "That's our working assumption." She looked at the display. The planet on it was a small orange dot, unremarkable, the 4th around a Class K star, one of 11 candidates in the survey cycle, the kind of world that from orbit looked like it might, with work, become something you could call home. She had thought it might be home. She had, for 2 heartbeats, when she first saw it through the porthole, let herself imagine the shape of a future on it. "Pull all 11 candidates," she said. Osi looked at her. "The colony has been there long enough to develop targeting logic," she said. "It knows what an arrival looks like. That means it's seen arrivals before. That means either this is the first time something arrived and it developed a response in, 12 hours? Or it's seen arrivals before and evolved for them. Adapted. And if it's adapted because something else came there first. She paused. Or because something else came to the other 10 candidates. And we've already surveyed 4 of them. We sent teams down. The silence in the room was a particular kind of silence. The medical screens. Found nothing, she said, because we weren't looking for subcellular colony organisms with a 0.3 millimeter transmission vector. We were looking for what we know. We don't know this yet. She looked at him steadily. Pull the 4 surveyed candidates. Full bio review. Everyone who went surface side. He was already reaching for his comm. She sat in the white room and she let him make the calls. Through the single porthole. The rooms on station always had one porthole, always oriented toward stars rather than the planet below. An architectural choice she had once thought was symbolic and now thought was just practical. She could see the arm of a galaxy. Billions of stars. 11 billion years of universe, give or take, and humanity out here in the last thin sliver of it, learning how to be afraid of the right things. She was tired in a way that sleep hadn't touched and probably wouldn't for a while. She was thinking about the walk to the ridge, 8 hours on a dead world, with no comms, building signals from dry plants, humming an old song to herself in the dark. She was thinking about the thing that had used Petrov's hands. She was thinking about the way the colony had moved against the capsule hull, patient, systematic, the way something moves when it has all the time in the world and knows it. Humanity had not had all the time in the world, ever. That was the thing the colony had miscalculated. That was the error in its model, in whatever passed for its understanding of the kind of organism it had encountered in Petrov's blood and Yale's footsteps. It had all the geological time in the universe, and it knew how to wait, and it knew how to recruit, and it knew how to reach. But it had never run up against something that would blow its own lifeboat and walk 8 hours to a ridge rather than let it spread. It had never encountered the particular stubbornness that isn't a personality trait. The stubbornness that is a decision made collectively, across generations, by every human who ever lost something and kept going anyway. The decision that is not bravery, because bravery is what you feel. This is something older than feeling, something that runs in the same deep substrate as the desire to find new worlds in the first place. The refusal, the flat, specific human refusal to be the vector. The rescue ship had landed. She had given them everything Petrov knew. She reached into her other suit pocket, the one that wasn't the photograph, and she pulled out the flask. Empty. She turned it in her hands, the metal worn smooth at the edges from years of handling, the little dent at the base from the time it had hit a bulkhead on a high-G maneuver. They'd laughed about it for 6 minutes, which was a long time to laugh in a survival scenario. Osi came back into the room. 3 of the 4 surface teams are clean, he said. He paused. The 4th team, survey mission 6 months ago, Europa-class lander, team of 2. One of them reported a respiratory anomaly post-mission. It was logged as altitude sickness from the local atmosphere and resolved within a week. She closed her eyes for a moment. Where is she now? Back on station. Station 12. Off duty, pending reassignment. He sat down across from her. His face was careful in the way faces go careful when they're holding something. Dr. Avani Nair. She's been back 8 weeks. And in those 8 weeks, she's been on a station with how many people? 1,400. And she's been normal, he said. Completely normal. No reported symptoms, no anomalies on any bioscan, full cognitive function, no complaints from colleagues. He paused. But the bioscan methodology didn't include subcellular colony detection because we didn't have a detection protocol for subcellular colony organisms until about 3 hours ago. He held up his comm. I've already sent the protocol. They're isolating Dr. Nair now. She's cooperating. She looked at the flask in her hands. She put it back in her pocket. What's the plan for Station 12? Soft lockdown. No one in or out until we have full bio-clearance on all 1,400 residents. He looked at her with an expression she recognized. The expression of someone who has just put down something heavy and discovered they now have to pick up something heavier. The directors are convening in 6 hours. They want you on the call. I'll be on the call. He stood, looked at her. You should sleep. I know. He moved toward the door and then stopped, the way people stop when they've thought of the thing they should have said first. You did the right thing, out there. You made the right call. She thought of Petrov's hands, the smoothness of the wound, the photograph of his daughter standing in the sun. I made the necessary call, she said. It's not the same thing. He left her alone in the white room. She looked out the porthole at the stars for a long time. She thought about a girl in Kazakhstan who was going to need someone to give her a photograph and find the right words for it. She thought about 1,400 people on Station 12 who were waking up right now to a soft lockdown and questions they didn't have answers to yet. She thought about 11 candidates on a survey list and how many of them might have been waiting a very long time. She thought about the colony, how old it was, how patient, how it had pushed against everything that arrived and found, for geological ages, that everything eventually yielded. She pressed her hand flat against the porthole, cold, solid, the divide between the breathable and the not. Everything that didn't want to come free would eventually, she had said once. You just had to commit to the pull. She was beginning to understand that worked both ways. Some things you pulled towards you, some things you held at the wall. The skill was knowing which was which, and having the stubbornness, the decision, the old human refusal, to act on the difference even when the cost was not theoretical, even when the cost was Petrov, even when the cost was everything you brought with you. The stars were unchanged. They didn't care about the colony or the cost, or the 1,400 people on Station 12, or the girl without her father. They were just there, enormous and old and patient in their own way, full of worlds that were waiting to be found or waiting to find you, and humanity was out here in the thin recent slice of time, still learning, still cataloging what could kill them, still blown to pieces by bad landings and still walking to the ridge anyway. She made a note in her duty log. She kept it short. Planet designation KR7741. Colony organism confirmed. Full quarantine recommended. Behavioral model attached. Crew status, Commander Y. Drawson recovered. Specialist M. Petrov. Kaya. Cause containment action. Beacon destroyed. Mission status. Successful, she submitted the log. She looked out at the stars. She put her forehead against the cold glass of the porthole, and she let herself be, for a little while, exactly as tired as she was. Then she stood up. There was a call in 6 hours, and 1,400 people on a station waiting for answers, and a girl in Kazakhstan who was going to hear that her father had been working. She had things to do.